Welcome to the Etsy Conversations podcast, featuring inspiring interviews with Etsy shop owners, hosted by Ijama Elazu.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Etsy Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Ijama, and I thank you for joining me for this week's episode. So this week, I'm doing something different. I do have on a guest, but what we're doing is starting a new type of series geared primarily towards you if you're listening and you have not yet set up your Etsy shop, or if you set it up and you're not really sure you did everything that you were supposed to, or you haven't, and there's some steps you missed along the way. What we're going to be doing is a detailed walkthrough of starting an Etsy shop the right way, getting your listings up the right way, making sure your shop is optimized for Etsy search and your listings are optimized also and whatnot. And so I have a guest on with me. She is Ruby Suze, also known as Susan Emina, and she's going to be starting an Etsy shop from scratch. And so we're going to be following her journey on the podcast. And this week's episode is me helping her walk through starting up her Etsy shop. And then in future episodes, we'll dive deeper into other Etsy related things like creating the perfect Etsy listing. I don't know if there's a perfect listing, but coming as close to perfect as we can with the optimizations, making sure that every field in the listing is set correctly and, optimized as well as possible for search. So, Suze, thank you so much for being my guest and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are so welcome. Oh, and I guess the more you listen, you'll realize that Suze is not in the US. Can you tell us where you're based?
I'm based in England. I was going to say sunny England. It's definitely not sunny today. It's pouring down with rain. It's, miserable day. But yeah, that's where I'm based.
Okay. Yes. And so what I like about the fact that you are in England is that because Etsy is an international marketplace, what we do is going to be the same for anyone, regardless of where one is based. There are some things that you have to set specifically for your location, like the currency you pick. So you will obviously be picking pound sterling, whereas, somebody else who might be doing the walkthrough with us based in the US will pick dollars, or if they're in Greece, will pick, I want to say drachmas. I think.
Wow. You did better than me, because I wouldn't have been able to get that for love or money.
I don't know. They could be using euros now. I forget which
Actually,
countries are all on euro and which ones are not. Okay. So let's do your shop setup. But before we do, can you first just tell us why you want to start an Etsy shop and what you plan on selling and what your goals are?
So why I wanted to start Etsy. I have wanted to start Etsy for the past, I would say 3 years, definitely, or all my life. I think I've just been a seller. I'm an all-round creative. I love making things. And I feel that Etsy is a fantastic place for people who are creative, who are artistic, who want to make a living from what they create in their imagination and with their hands. And I just thought it would be a really great place to sell my ideas and concepts for products. So I have recently rediscovered and reconnected with my artistic self and my talents and things. And so wanted to sell my artwork through Etsy. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping to do that through, Christmas is coming. So I'm hoping to do that through Christmas cards and T-shirts and hoodies. But also I'm hoping to develop it into more kind of personalized products. So more things that are reflecting kind of like my culture and things that I'm interested in as well. But primarily at the moment, I'm going to focus on Christmas gift ideas and Christmas items, like based on the nativity story.
Okay. All right. And your goals for selling on Etsy, right now, as you're starting off, do you have a certain dollar amount, or I guess I shouldn't say dollar, a certain figure in mind that you want to achieve, or right now, do you have another job that's supporting you, and so you just want to get the machine going?
Yeah, I think I do have a day job.
Okay.
So by day, I'm a project manager in the health service. So it's pretty full on. But my aim has always been to work for myself. So my goal for Etsy is really to develop my understanding of how I can be a true creative entrepreneur and really maximize my creativity and the things that I make.
Okay.
Um, in on Initially, my goal, especially this Christmas, is I would love to sell out of all the Christmas cards that I've bought. So
Okay.
I have ordered 500 cards of different designs, and I'm really hoping it would be really brilliant if they could all go before Christmas. I'd be a super. That would be the best Christmas present ever. So yeah, that's my short-term goal, is to try and see if I can get these cards gone
Okay.
and sold.
And so is your craft um designing the cards, and then your art prints, your artwork is printed onto the cards?
Yeah, that's my
Okay.
craft. It is designing at the moment.
Okay.
I can sew, so I'm hoping to then develop into the other things that I do as well. But for now, just because of resources and time, I thought, actually, rather than waiting for the perfect storm, as they say, where you've got everything laid out and you've got the perfect sewing machine and the perfect materials,
Mm-hmm.
what can I do right now? So right now I can work with my artwork,
Okay.
which I do both digitally and with pens and paper and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. Have you looked around on the Etsy platform and tried to figure out what niche your products fit in the best?
Yeah, I've done some research. Yeah, I've done some research and I've thought about where my product might be, but at the same time, I found it a little bit challenging because I haven't seen what I'm trying to go for, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
any sense.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen that many African American Christmas themed artwork cards, or I've seen some, but not in the style that I'm going for.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not, I'm a bit worried that maybe that means that it's not there, as in
Mm-hmm.
there is not a market for it,
Mm-hmm.
because I can't see anybody else. But at the same time, I'm also kind of hopeful because I'm like, oh, maybe there is a gap.
Right.
Um, and yeah.
Yeah. So my thought is it could be a couple of things. One, like you said, maybe that market isn't shopping on Etsy.
Mm.
Two, maybe you couldn't find anything on there because the people who are selling those products just haven't optimized their products for search. So when you look, they're not listed in a way that makes finding them easy. Could be that.
Ah.
Could be that also. Um, or three, maybe they just aren't on the platform yet. So have you tried um to see if there is a market for this particular theme of greeting cards, like maybe posting on Instagram to see if, there's some traction there?
Yeah, so I've got an Instagram following. I also have a YouTube channel, although I haven't done anything on YouTube for a little while now. So what I did is I have been drawing, before Christmas, before this time, I've been doing my
Mm-hmm.
artwork, and obviously it's predominantly featuring African American characters.
Mm-hmm.
And when I did have my idea for my Christmas cards, I did put them up just to say, oh, this is what I've been doing. I did it in my stories, and I
Mm-hmm.
did get lots of positive response. So I was like,
Okay.
oh, okay, this could really be something.
Okay.
And I got a lot of interest from the Instagram stories. I
Okay,
think
good.
also when you were talking about the Etsy, the other thing that I've noticed is, like you're saying, is that it might be that people haven't listed it yet, because when I was looking, it was way back in, I want to say September, October. So I've been
Mhm.
researching for a while.
Mhm.
So although maybe if I did a search now, because it's closer to Christmas, I might find a lot more people have started to kind of get back, listing their Christmas cards.
Yeah. Yeah, could be. Okay. So that's good to know. So if you had to pick one social media platform that you're going to use to promote your products, because yes, we're going to work on optimizing for Etsy search, but you'll have to do some marketing on your own as well. And I would say, try and pick just one. So your options are, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter also. Etsy makes it easy to post to that as well. And what other social media those are the four that immediately come to mind. I might be missing a couple. Oh, there's YouTube as well. Yes, YouTube.
Mm.
Which one would you most want to focus your efforts on to help grow this shop that we're going to set up?
See, this is the bit that I say I'm stuck, because
Mm-hmm.
Instagram is the easiest in my understanding. I've already developed a small following, and I understand it a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But I have recently started tinkering with Pinterest. So I did way back in summer, just on my personal page, because of my YouTube, I put up a post to do with um, something completely different, something like lock extensions. And
Okay.
I noticed that I got a lot of traffic and a lot of impressions on that one photo. I was completely shocked when I went to check it
Mm-hmm.
recently to see it's been viewed like thousands of times.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd never seen that before, that kind of level of interest on Instagram. However, it did take 3 months before that level of, views and clicks were on that one photo. So it makes me wonder whether I've started to think, oh, maybe I should look at someone maybe managing Pinterest for me,
Okay.
and then I focus on Instagram, just because I think Pinterest on the long run actually would be really good, because I heard somewhere someone quote about that a lot of Etsy sales come through Pinterest.
Yeah. Yes.
So I thought that would be a good place as well.
Yes. For me, um, I most of my and the reason why I know why I get of all the social media platforms, more sales come because of traffic from Pinterest is because when I do a listing, at the end of the listing, Etsy gives you the option to post to Pinterest and on Twitter, just those two. And I always take that offer. I always do it. So for me, I know that's why, because they make it easy. It's one click and it's done. I put it on
Mm.
whichever board I want it to go on and it's done. But there's a lot more work that goes into getting the most out of Pinterest. Like a one and done is not going to do it. I think the one and done system that I use with my listings is definitely not the most efficient, but it's something.
Mm.
So you want to assess um if you're weighing out if you're weighing between Pinterest and Instagram. uh with Pinterest you will get that longevity and the staying power, but the effort that goes into doing that can be upfront significant. But once you learn how to use certain tools that make posting on Pinterest a bit easier, and you can put systems in place to keep that Pinterest machine going, you're good on there. So weigh the amount of time or money that you would need to dedicate to using Pinterest to leverage your Etsy shop versus Instagram, which, yes, is easier, but you don't get the staying power, you don't get the staying effect, you don't get the traction, if you will, that you will in the long run from Pinterest.
Yeah,
Does that
I
make
agree.
sense?
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
agree. And I think that that's what I've been told and that's what I've seen. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think Instagram is literally that. If it feels, it says the name on the tin, doesn't it? It's instant. That's
Instant. Yep.
exactly that's what it is. But
Yeah.
Pinterest, because of the way it's set up, it
Yeah.
really is about gathering people's thoughts and thinking and ideas. And I've heard that Pinterest, a lot of people who use Pinterest go to buy things.
Yeah.
They're going with a specific goal in mind, whereas on Instagram you're kind of just scrolling and kind of nosing. You don't necessarily always go into Instagram to buy something or with a specific goal in mind. So yeah.
Right. And so
Yeah.
with that, then your goals should be different. If you know why people are on each platform, so your efforts on Pinterest should be geared towards that person who's ready to buy and catering to what somebody with a buying mindset is looking for. Whereas on Instagram, it's more social, it's more community based, if you will. So perhaps the efforts you want to focus on Instagram are around just having people get to know you and what you're doing and what you're creating, and getting people who are interested in that to like you and to engage with you and to want to learn more about you. They don't necessarily want to buy just yet, but they're getting to know you. And eventually, the more they get to know you, at some point when they want something that you make, they'll remember because they know you, because they have that connection with you. And so you're
Right.
using Instagram just to make connections and
Right.
grow a community. Whereas Pinterest, you're using to draw in sales from people who are ready to buy. So your goals on both are actually quite different. And
Right.
as someone who is starting, you don't want to tear yourself into, you don't want to divide yourself too much. So whichever one you think you have the bandwidth for, then you have to decide where you want to focus on. So if in the beginning stages you have more of a desire to grow a following and to grow an audience for your work, then you focus your time on Instagram. If you're more concerned with, no, I really just want to grow this thing, I want sales, I'm only interested in getting the attention of people who want to buy, who know what they want to buy and want it now, then focus your attention on Pinterest. But the other alternative is, like you mentioned, there are Pinterest managers that you can hire. So if you have the funds to actually pay someone to focus on one or the other, because you can pay people for both Instagram and Pinterest. I'm not saying buy followers, but I'm saying people to manage these accounts for you. That's another option.
Yeah, and I think that's the option that I thought about, because I thought, hang on, I really like the sound of Pinterest, but I found it I was like, am I just there's just so much information that I just feel like I can't, I'm not that old. So I was like, why do I feel like I know why don't
Yep.
I feel like I know this stuff? That this sounds like Japanese. Like, it honestly it freaks me out a little bit. And I thought, right, hang on.
Yeah.
Let's find someone who can do this for you until you have the space in your mind to get this information and manage it yourself, because it was just a lot. And I think when you're just starting out, I'm just trying to get my head around, just how does this thing Etsy work? Like, it just feels like there is just so many things that I'm learning. And I thought, no, hang on, let's delegate some of this.
Yes, delegation is the word.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's delegate some of this. That's what I decided.
Okay. So we'll talk about that in our next conversation, and see what you decided to do. So that's something for you to mull over and figure out. Because just opening up the shop right now, you don't need to make that decision right this minute.
Mm.
Except for making sure you grab your handles so that you can try and keep your brand consistent across all the platforms.
Yeah.
Okay. So so let's now talk about setting up your shop. So on a very practical level, the very first thing you want to do is set up an Etsy account. So everybody needs an account to sell on Etsy. And it can be an account you already have. You might be buying on Etsy already. You can actually open up a shop using the same account. And sometimes people have had accounts on Etsy, and so when you open up your shop, and I know this is something that irks a lot of people. It irked me because I opened up my shop after I had been on Etsy for a while. So it looked like I had been there for a while, and,
Yeah.
my shop. So it says, on Etsy since XYZ. But I was like, well, no, I only opened the shop now. Don't make it seem like my shop has been dead for years. So you'll have that to grapple with. So opening up your shop. Do you have an Etsy account?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
All right. So, you know how to open up your shop already, but for anyone who doesn't, in order to to set up, not open up your shop, you know how to set up an account. For anyone who is just starting from scratch, all you need is an email address, and then you'll need to set a password. Now, Etsy allows you to also open an account using your Google account if you have one, or if you have Gmail, basically it's a Google account, or a Facebook account. Everyone's preference is different. For me, I would never link my Facebook account to Etsy. And this is just a personal thing. I think Facebook is really invasive, and so I just try to keep it as separate from everything else in my life as I can. And so my advice would be, if you can, just use an email address that you want to dedicate to just everything Etsy. Now, if you ever want to open up a second shop, just be aware that you'll need a separate email address. For some reason, Etsy will not let you use the same email to open up multiple shops. So, but we're not going to deal with that right now, because we're just talking about one shop. So you've done that part. You have your Etsy account, and you're able to log in.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So the next thing you want to do is choose a name. So let's talk about choosing a name for your shop. And to start opening up your shop, there's if you're on any page on Etsy and you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's always a link that says open a shop or start selling or something like that. So let's just assume someone is walking through and they're at that point. Let's talk about choosing a shop name. Do you have any ideas for a shop name?
So names have been a very touchy subject, I should say, because I have a YouTube channel. I have my name on my Instagram as well. So I thought it would make sense to have Ruby Suze as the Etsy shop. But because I thought, hang on, because of Instagram and the way the algorithm was, I thought, oh, maybe I should just have a separate Instagram that is just my artwork, which is what I did. I set up this separate Instagram with my artwork, and also because I teach art classes virtually as well. So I was like, let's just have that separate from just my personal, my personal business profile page. But obviously I've got a much bigger a following from my personal one. And I thought, uh, I would prefer to have it as Ruby Suze,
Mm-hmm.
but the problem that I had was that it didn't, it might, people who go Ruby Suze won't necessarily associate that with my art. And then if they come from the shop and they go onto my Instagram, it won't make sense because we're like, why am I looking at her? I don't know, on the beach somewhere. Where's her artwork? I want to see more pictures of her artwork.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought the best thing to do was to combine the two. So to combine my art name by
Okay.
Ruby Suze so that if someone was looking for it, it makes sense that, oh, they can connect the two.
Yeah.
However, my art name is not very, um, it's not straightforward. So I started to think maybe I should have just kept it as my personal name because people who go into Etsy really don't care necessarily. Maybe they're not going to go onto Instagram. So this is where I'm in this dilemma. So I've changed it about, I don't know, 3 times so far. I'm just like, oh, I need to figure it out. Yeah, I've struggled with that if I'm
Okay.
honest.
So a couple of things. One, if you do want to brand it with your name, you can do that and then add some descriptors that explain what you sell. So Ruby Suze art or Ruby
Mm-hmm.
Suze prints or Ruby Suze whatever it is you want to do to modify it so that you combine the two so people aren't confused. The nice thing with having a separate Instagram handle for that is you can change your Instagram handle to match what you decide to make your Etsy shop name.
Mm.
Whereas on Etsy, you can only change your shop name one time before you need approval for Etsy before you change to change it again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more important that you pick a name for your shop on Etsy that you're most comfortable with, and then it might be easier to make the other things fall in place or fall in line with what you do on Etsy. Not that you can never change your shop name after the first time. It's just you have to go through a process of getting it approved by Etsy, which
Mm-hmm.
might be kind of tedious.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. I think it's something that I need to there's some thought around it because I really struggled recently because I'm like looking more at products and thinking of because of the products that I'm creating,
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to think I need to brand it in such a way to prevent copying. And so just to, it made, excuse me, made me think more about the name and thinking, how am I, this is getting a bit confusing. And
Mm-hmm.
like you're saying, it was getting a bit tedious when I was branding this afternoon. I was like, no, this isn't working for me.
Yeah.
And it'd be easier to have one name through the whole thing because then it's just like, yeah, it's just me,
Right.
rather than separate entity
Right.
altogether.
Another thing to consider when you're deciding on a name is the ease with which people can find you. So
Mm,
in search, it doesn't really matter so much because people are going to be looking for a product. So you don't have to worry about your shop name if somebody is looking for something specific and that's something you make because your listings should be optimized to show up well in search. But
right.
if you're on social media and you want to send people to your Etsy shop and you want to tell them, oh, look for me on Etsy, my shop name is XYZ. You want to make sure you've picked a name that doesn't take too much explanation or
Mm,
wangling for people to find, so that they can just go directly to Etsy and put it in there and you come up. So be careful of using abbreviations or substituting numbers for letters or things like that, because it's easy to lose people when you say, well, it's XYZ, but the X
yeah.
is, EKS, not
Yeah.
X,
And I,
Yeah.
and I think that's the mistake that I have made because I have, it was supposed to be I can create. And I think because of that and the way I spelt it, I was like, oh, I'm trying to be creative with the way I spell create with the number 8.
Yeah.
Get it? It's so cool.
Yeah, it's
But
clever.
actually, it's clever, but like you said, it's not really searchable. So
Yeah.
actually that makes so much sense. And my elder sister is going to she's going to be rolling on the floor because she's always been, but your name, just put it as your name, just put, what's wrong with you,
Yes.
why, just appreciate Susan. And I was like, oh no, I don't want Susan anywhere near it. So yeah, I really hear that, and that's definitely something that I'm going to take away and think about. It's all these things that we just don't, you just can, I think as a creative person as well, when you're starting a business, you're trying to think of branding and trying to be, well, I'm always trying to be clever, I guess, or like, you're trying to be quirky and different and stand out, and you can overdo it.
Yep.
I think you can completely overdo it, so it's over engineered. Look, just Apple was Apple, like, hey.
Yes. Yes.
It's Apple.
It's
Like,
Apple.
who would have in 2020? Who would have thought that anything goes beyond Apple? Like, that is the most basic.
Yep. Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
a basic name. So yeah, that makes so much
Yes.
sense.
Yeah, because I think we get that point now. Yeah. And not to say that you can't come up with something creative that hasn't been, like Etsy. I mean, what does it mean? Somebody
That's
thought it up. But think about how you spell it. You spell it the same way you say it. So it's not hard. Google, another thought up name, but you spell it the way you say it. So it's easy for someone to, if you say, oh, my business name is Google. I wish it was, but it's not.
That'd be great.
They can guess at the spelling and hit on it, or, Etsy, guess at the spelling and hit on it. So as you rethink what you want to name your shop, just keep these points in mind. How easy will it be for someone you tell to go and find you to actually find you without, jumping through hoops?
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay. And before you change it, if you have the name already, just remember the first time you can change it, no problem. But then after that, don't feel like you're locked in. If you change it once and then, you decide you still don't like the name, you just have to jump through some hoops with Etsy to change it again. Like, they'll want to know why you're changing it.
Yeah.
Big deal.
Yeah.
You'll say, look, I don't like the name. No one can fault you for not liking your shop name. Yeah. And the nice thing is, well, nice and not so nice. Nice in that you can look when you're picking the shop name, Etsy will tell you whether it's taken or not. Not so nice is if someone has ever used that name before, whether the shop is still active or not, you can't repeat the name. So if you think of the perfect name and somebody else happened to have used it once in the past, you will never be able to get that name on Etsy.
Wow. So even if I have done it before, they'll say no.
I don't know if you have done it before, they will say no. My guess is probably.
Oh, wow.
And I think the reason they do that is because if you change the name, they redirect the links to your new name.
Right.
And so if you try and reuse an old name that somebody else had, I don't know how they would do the redirection. So I'm not really sure. That's my guess as to why they won't let you. But I mean, who knows?
That makes so much sense, though. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah. Okay. So the third thing that you'll do, and in our next call, I'll just follow up because I know you're not doing it right now. So in our next call, we'll recap to see, how you did, just walking through these basic steps to just get set up.
Mm-hmm.
So is your shop settings. This is something that a lot of people overlook, but actually, Etsy has said that filling out your settings does affect how you show up in Etsy search and if you show up in Etsy search. So they want you to fill out those settings. And it's kind of easy because they've given, some of them have like some stock info, some
Mm-hmm.
stock wording, which you can just accept. Or if you don't want to, you can customize the stock wording and tweak some things to match what you want for your shop. And so this is something that you should make sure you do, because if your settings aren't like you don't have the policies in place and whatnot, Etsy will not really show your listings, because they want people to know if you have a return policy, what is it? If you have what your shipping policy is, how soon are you going to ship out? What's your what do they call it? Processing time, all that. So all that needs to be filled out. In addition to things like when you go to the shop settings, this is also where you'll set the language and the currency and where you're located. But it's a very step by step. It's pretty straightforward. It's hard to miss anything. So if you miss something, it would have to be a conscious effort. Okay. So you'll do your shop settings. Have you done your shop settings?
As you were talking, I was like, wait, hang on. What does she mean? No, I think I did do them. It was a while ago. The only one that I think I need to kind of go back over is looking at like returns and exchanges,
Oh, yeah.
and what like that kind of, what does that mean, and really thinking about what impact that would have and what I can possibly offer, and whether that affects. So if, like, for example, some of my items might be printed, and if somebody wants a return, how would I, if I've printed onto the t-shirt, how do I process that, and what will I have to do? So I think it's going to take some research, figuring out how do people handle returns on Etsy, and how do people handle exchanges, especially if the customers, because I have a feeling that there might be a lot of customers that I sell to that might not be based in the UK. They might be based in America, especially because I think the words in search come up as African American, even though we don't use that term in the UK. People don't usually you don't call yourself African British either.
Right.
So I just thought actually that might be a big market for myself. But how will I deal with that if they want to return it from, I don't know, Missouri or somewhere, wherever it is in America?
Okay, so let's talk about that. If somebody in California buys something from you and they don't like it, how do you want to handle it?
First of all, I'll be sad.
Yeah, okay. Rejection hurts.
But apart from that, apart from dealing with the rejection of you don't like my product and crawling into a hole, well, first of all, I'd have to speak to the customer to find out why and what the issue is.
Communication, very important.
And really speak. And I'm hoping, I don't like it when I buy something and people don't respond to me almost, if not immediately, like making me wait a half a day to respond to me when I'm a customer. I think just further makes me angry. So I try to respond as quickly as possible, and then ideally I'd want to see if there is a way that they can accept it as it is. If I don't want to offer a full refund because it's already been sent, the packaging's already been done. So could I give you, I don't want to say a coupon, because sometimes people don't want to buy again from you because they've had a bad experience. Oh, that's a good question. How would I deal with that?
Okay. So let's say someone just doesn't want it. Let's say it doesn't fit properly.
Right.
And so they
Okay.
can't. Okay, well, I don't know why I'm talking about clothing.
Yeah,
But
because I am going to do clothing. I've
okay.
got.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let's say it's a piece of clothing and it doesn't fit properly. So there's no way they can use it. In that situation, you can't leave them with something they can't use, right? So
Right.
they'll have to send it back. So do you want to pay for the shipping or do you want them to pay to ship it back to you? That's the first
I
thing you
think.
want to think of. So
Yeah.
one, that means you'll have to take returns. So you can say you accept returns. And it's always nice to say you accept returns because not every complaint is going to end up in a return. But saying that you accept returns gives a buyer some level of comfort knowing that, okay, if something does go wrong or isn't right, I don't have to keep it. So
Mm.
accepting returns is a basic yes for some things, not everything. Like digital products, if it's something that you sell digitally, then usually in those cases you don't accept the returns. But let's say in a situation like this where there is room that a product you sell can't be used, then it's reasonable to say I will accept the return because you don't want somebody stuck with something they can't use. So
Right.
then the next thing you want to think about is, okay, I'll accept returns and I'll do exchanges. That's set. How much time do you want to give someone to make up their mind about what to do? That's the
Yeah.
next thing you want to think about. So do you want to tell them, within a week of getting the product, decide whether or not you have a week to decide whether or not you want to keep it, or 14 days or a full month like Amazon does?
Mm.
How much
I think.
time are you comfortable with?
I think you would know within 2 weeks whether this is like, and you should be able to contact that person within 2 weeks. I think if something malfunctions, a month is a long time to have like a t-shirt or something that you suddenly realize after a month of wearing
Mm-hmm.
it completely. Yeah, I think that's a long time.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, that's definitely something I didn't consider. I was so held like so focused on listing and products and names and stuff that I didn't even think, what if somebody doesn't like it? What do I
Yeah.
do? You know?
Yeah. I mean, hopefully there'll be few and far between, but yes, there's always that. Okay. So you're comfortable with 14 days. You're comfortable with
Mhm.
someone getting a product from you and having it for a couple of weeks and, to get comfortable with it and decide whether or not they like it. And that's reasonable. So then you can set and in your returns and exchanges section of your shop, then you can say, 14 days is well, not the time to return, because or you can say if 14 days is how much time you give them, they can let you know within 14 days, but they also need to ship it back to you within 14 days, within that first 2 weeks.
Mm, mm.
So at least everything you sell, then okay, for 2 weeks there's still a don't hold your breath period before you know whether or not it's the sale is going to stick.
Yeah.
So the amount of time that they need to let you know that they have a problem and the amount of time to ship it back don't necessarily have to be the same. They can be different. So if you want to know sooner, you can say, well, let me know, within, the first week if you don't like it, but, you have 2 weeks to actually send it back. Because think about, that first week, you're probably going to be communicating back and forth. Like,
Mm.
once they get it, if they see a problem, they can message you right away. And then give yourself time to try and make it right. And then if you can't, then they still have an additional week to put it back in the mail to you. But you want them to to reach out to you as soon as possible because you want to try and fix it quickly.
Mm-hmm.
If there's something that they're not happy with. But then also, there are some products that you might not want to take back. If you're going to be doing custom work and you can't resell it to someone else, maybe you don't want to take those back. Maybe those sales are final. Because when you personalize an order, you customize it, it's good for one person. It's no good for anyone else. So that's something you also want to be specific about when you're doing those customizations. And I think most people know or will understand that if they're making something, if you're making something that's specifically for them or for someone, that they're, you're putting a name on it, you're putting a date on it, you're putting, something that's very personal. Well, it's no good to anyone else. So I think most people would understand if you said, okay, if we're doing any custom work, I can't give you a full refund. Maybe I can give you a partial refund if you don't like it, but I'm not going to take it back, and I'll give you a partial refund. So think about that too. You don't have to take back everything, and sometimes you just can't take back everything.
Yeah, especially if it's personalized and and they've selected the font or they've selected the colors, etc. It's very difficult.
Yeah. So if you'll be doing custom work, which I think you will at some point.
Yeah.
So that should also be part of the policies that you put on there, just to make it plain and make it clear to buyers. So filling out your policies, is there anything else that you think you want to talk through when it comes to filling out your settings and your policies, or do you think that gives you a fair idea of how to think through what policies you want to put in place in your shop?
No, actually, I think it's definitely given me more ideas of actually thinking about a shop and not just seeing it as this Etsy shop as something cute that I've put online, right? Like thinking of it as almost like a physical shop as well.
Mm-hmm.
So because when I think I have a bit more, or you have a bit more not respect, but when you have a physical shop and you're going to set up a stall or something, you think about all these things.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems sometimes I may have overlooked some of these things. I think just the policies and things, and you just kind of be like, I just want to get to selling stuff,
Yeah, that's a fun part.
Yeah, that's the fun bit is getting things out there and seeing everything so styled and everything. So yeah.
Okay, so for now, do you think that's enough for you to go off and do, or do you want a little bit more to go off and do before we touch base again?
Oh, I always like to stretch. So yeah, give me one more thing. What else could I think about?
Okay, so think about how you're going to set your prices.
Okay.
All right. So this is, and if you listen to the podcast, there's so many different ways people can set prices and decide on what they're going to charge. So I'll just give you some things to consider, and then you play with the numbers and see what they look like, and see if you can come up with prices for your products. And the other thing to keep in mind when you're coming up with your pricing is you are not your customer. So what you think you might want to pay is not necessarily what your customer is willing or might be willing to pay for your product. So keep that in mind, because sometimes we think, well, this is really what, when I take all things considered, this is really a fair price, but I don't know if anyone would want to pay that. So I'm just going to knock off, X amount just so
I
it
am
looks good.
so guilty of doing that. Like I've done that my entire business life.
Yeah.
And my husband gets increasingly annoyed with me because I will make a skirt. Like I used to make these beautiful circular leather skirts,
Mm-hmm.
and with netting and all this embroidery and things. And he was like, that should be at least selling for £100. I was like, who's going to spend £100 on a skirt? I would never spend He said, yeah, because you make them. That's
Yes.
why you
Yeah.
never sell
Because you
buy
can do
them
it. That's why
for
you wouldn't
£100,
pay
because you
that.
can do it. Right. So what's the point in you? But there is someone out there who will spend that money.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no. And I talked myself totally out of the business.
Yeah.
And somebody found one of them ages, many years down the line, and was like, oh my gosh, where can I get this? I'd pay hundreds of pounds for this skirt. I was like, oh my God. He said, I told you,
Yeah.
just sell it for what it's worth. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
true.
Okay. So good. I'm glad that we talked about that. So now just resist doing that, and we can talk about the prices next time that you came up with, or in between now and then, because I know you're going to have your shop open in time for selling this Q4. So if we discuss it offline, the next time we record, we can talk through what you did and how you came to the final point that you came to. But here are some things to consider as you're coming up with your price. So the cost of your materials and the supplies. Definitely factor in your labor. And then marketing. Remember, you said you might just pay someone to do your Pinterest, to manage your Pinterest account, or Instagram, or both. So there's a cost associated with that. And if you have people really working your social media from the beginning, the chances that your sales should pick up sooner are higher. So you do want to wrap that into your production costs. And then anything else that goes into making your product. So consider all those as you're trying to define what your final price point will be for your products.
Great. I will. Listen, I feel like I've gone to school and I've got some homework. But
Okay.
no.
Okay, good. All right. So are you comfortable saying what your shop name is right now so folks can check it out? And if not, what I'll do is, because this is live on November 4th, I will just have people look on convome.com, and whatever the name is for your shop will be on the site there so they can see what you've done.
Well, yeah, I think that would be better. It's probably
Okay.
going to be connected to my name.
Okay.
I definitely think it's going to be Ruby Suze something.
Okay.
Because I think it's easier. It's simple. I don't have to overthink and over engineer it.
Okay.
But yeah, you did say something.
So for sure. Okay. So as of the day we're recording this, Suze's shop doesn't yet have a name.
No.
But if you're listening to this podcast now, you can go to convome.com and look up. It will be the most recent episode. It's episode 288, Setting Up Shop with Ruby Suze, aka Susan Emina. And the name of her Etsy shop will be in that post, so you can check out what she's done up until this point.
Awesome.
Great. So, Suze, we're going to have our next call. I don't know when yet, but I will post it in this episode so folks know when to follow up, or just subscribe to the podcast and it will automatically show up in your feed. And in our next conversation, we will just talk about, you having walked through all these steps. And then next step will be, I think we'll talk about, do a deep dive on your listings to walk through actually setting up your listings and optimizing them for Etsy search. And then whatever else comes up along the way. What do you think?
Oh, sounds so exciting. I'm so excited.
Okay, good. Good. So I hope that this will help you get moving on your shop and actually open up your shop. And for anyone else listening who feels kind of stuck, you want to open a shop and you don't know where to start, I hope this also helps you just think through some things that you need and just gets you to click that button and just open up and start. And hopefully you'll follow us along on this journey. Let me see. I usually ask my guests before we close how people can connect with you, but your Etsy shop will be in the listing. Is there any other way folks can connect with you if they want to, Suze?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram as Ruby Suze Creates. So it's usually just Ruby Suze, or I'll come up straight away. I'm also on YouTube, so I'm gonna get ready to launch some new videos. As well.
Okay, and it's Ruby Suze Creates, CREATES.
Ruby Suze Creates. Yeah, normal creates way. I've not tried to be clever, I promise.
What's your YouTube channel?
The same, Ruby Suze Creates.
Oh,
it's the
nice.
same.
Okay,
yeah.
great.
So I've kept it consistent that way. You see,
nice.
So I just need to.
Why wouldn't you want your Etsy shop to be the same?
Because it was just because my art was on Instagram as something else.
I see. Yes.
So because of this whole, and I think this is the problem when you spend so much time listening to so many different people who are like, no, you've got to keep to your niche. And I'm like, okay, so my followers on my Instagram might be confused. Like, why is she drawing now? She was just talking about her locks 2 minutes ago, you see. So I thought I'd just keep my art separate so that I can post my artwork all the time.
Oh, okay. I see. Okay. That makes sense. All right. So you do have stuff to think through then.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. So I will put links to Suze's Instagram and YouTube channel so you can connect with her there. And thank you, Suze, for doing this and making yourself I was going to say scapegoat, but that sounds so horrible. An example. An example for this. I hope it will be helpful, first and foremost to you, and then also to anyone else who is, on a similar journey as you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure to listen to everyone's stories. And and also I listened to Anne. I think it was Anne a few episodes back now.
Yeah.
She was from the UK as well.
Yes.
And actually looking for her page because that's a whole different story. But I was looking for a new engagement ring and I couldn't find it. I found it and then I couldn't find it. And then I saw her on your podcast. I was like, oh, I wish I listened at that time because I needed a ring, but now I've got one. But actually, funnily enough, I did get a vintage one, so I was happy that I supported her whole sustainability and kindness and stuff. So I was really, really happy about that.
Oh, nice. Oh, good. I'm glad to hear it. I'm sure she will be too. And I thank you for listening to the podcast this week. If you want to connect with me, you can go to convome.com, use the contact form there. If you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, you can use the Be My Guest form. And if you just want to send me a message, a quick hello or what have you, Instagram is probably the best way right now at Convo Podcast. And until then, I will be back again with another episode next week.
Thank you for listening. You can subscribe to the podcast in iTunes, and while you're there, please leave a review too. Visit convome.com to leave a comment or feedback on this episode.